Neil, go ahead.
Hey, good evening. Before you start the stopwatch on me, I would like to say I'm not a resident of the town of Stonington, but I am a 60-year resident of the Mystic Fire District. And about 25 years ago, the town of Stonington and the fire district was faced with an almost identical situation as you are faced with through these meetings, which is a defunct property, the Cottrell property, the lumberyard, was foreclosed, and the fire district was faced with, I'd say, the vultures of condo heaven coming to probably the finest piece of property on the Mystic River. And we're concerned about it. A miracle occurred. They went into the auction in Boston and got the property. I hope everybody here realizes that the fire district is a private company, just as the Smiler Wharf project is. They are not a public agency. They decided that for the benefit of the fire district, that River Park would be a better solution than condos, profit-making commercial establishments, and so on. The officers of the fire district felt that they were busy running a fire department, so they created the Mystic River Park Commission, and I became the first chairman. And I'll tell you the charges they gave to me and my commission. The first one was to get it built, and that went from everything from the federal regulations, Army engineers, Coast Guard, state regulations, working on the waterfront, getting access to the waterfront. We succeeded. We built that park for Mystic, for Stonington, at no cost to Stonington at all. The second charge they placed on my commission was, in the time that you're creating the park, hold as many transparent public meetings as you possibly can and ask the fire district what they want the park to do. Number one, what do you want it to do? And he said, we want a park where we can enjoy looking at the river and not looking through the deck houses of yachts parked along a marina waterfront. They wanted a green, a place where anybody could come, that the residents would be welcome, visitors would be welcome, tourists would be welcome, but don't use the property to draw in commercial entertainment. The next thing they said was, we don't want any commercial sales on the waterfront. We don't want any alcohol sales on the waterfront. And we got into trouble with the Chamber of Commerce because they wanted to run beer halls on the Mystic River Park. So here we are 25 years later. I would frankly say I don't think anybody in town would want that have changed to condo heaven. And yet you're looking at a similar project just a few blocks south of that same area, saying, oh, it's going to be great if we let commercial opportunities bring traffic, tourists into town with a modest increase in the grand list. That's a folly. In the 60 years I've been in town, I've been involved with traffic studies. I've been involved with attempts to find any solutions to access to the area. There are none. When you look from the interstate at exit 89 in Noundy, they funnel either down to the flagpole or to US 1 on the east side, US 1 on the west side, and on the east side, they end up at Washington Street. And there isn't anybody in this audience that has ever traveled either down Broadway or from Greenmanville Avenue into Washington Street that ever expects to see a two-lane highway into Smiler's Wharf. There is no solution unless you're willing to exercise eminent domain and tear down residents and properties to get an avenue in there. There is no traffic solution that's going to improve with this development. The parking inventory in downtown Mystic, and every one of us here has heard that the parking problem is always there. The parking inventory hasn't changed plus or minus 1% in 50 years. And we've had so many commissions and committees looking at it. Unless you want to tear down historic buildings or neighborhoods, there is no place else. And yet, here we are faced with a group that says, oh, we're going to take all the old derelict buildings off and we're going to start with 7.5 acres of clear property, and they haven't made a single offer to provide any increase in our parking inventory. They haven't made any effort to say how we will improve Washington Street from a one-lane street at busy times. And consequently, all I can say is those who don't remember the history are willing to repeat the mistakes. I guess my final shot is building in a floodplain. Anybody that thinks they're going to solve that problem by building higher bulkheads and so on, fail to, and then put their buildings on stilts. As soon as it starts flooding, all of that parking space that's part of the parking inventory that the Smiler's Wharf says is available will be flooded with cars. And the people there will take their cars and go elsewhere. So the parking inventory gets less. And so the numbers have been kind of fiddled a bit to say we can barely meet the parking requirements. They don't meet the parking requirements. Parking in a flood zone is folly. So I hope that your commission will take a hard look at what you did right once up the street at the Mystic River Park and not try to correct it with a commercial development. Thank you.
I'm Nick Salerno, Dennison Avenue, Mystic. And first, let me just thank everyone who went before who was so eloquent. And I'm going to save a lot of your time because I'm not going to repeat any of that. It's getting late. I have a background in science. So I look at numbers maybe a little differently. No one has mentioned a lot of numbers, so I just kind of leafed through the report, looked at a couple of facts, and I was kind of puzzled when I tried to get the numbers to work. As to parking spaces, I think I read it correctly that the allocation for parking spaces for restaurants is 1 car for 4 seats. Now, personally, when I go to dinner, I take my wife. That's 2. When I go to dinner, I take my wife. That's 2 people. Very rarely do I have the back seats filled. Sometimes people go to the restaurant just to meet someone else. That's 1 person per car. In a 100-seat restaurant like Red 36, that's 25 places allotted. That's not enough space, especially then when you count the 15 spots allotted to the workers. When I sit in the restaurant, I can see 12 or 15 people running around with black shirts and a Red 36 on the back. That's not even counting who's in the kitchen. So I think the numbers are skewed a little bit to make it look like a doable project. I'm not so sure that's true. As for the off-site parking, if you drive past the Packard building, just about any time, you'll see about 4 empty spots. It's always filled. middle of the day, middle of the week, just about any time. That's just for the parking numbers. The only other number I want to bring up is the elevation above sea level, which is about 2 to 3 feet. And that doesn't leave you a lot of room for flooding events. And it's low enough that in the next 20 to 30 years, the mortgages on the townhouses won't be paid off before their feet are wet. So I don't see how they can want to stay there or anybody would want to go there. I think it's all wet. Thanks.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Claire Sarter, and I live at 12 Jackson Avenue. But I first want to read a letter that was given to me by a woman that lives at Jerry Brown Road, Stone Ridge. She's a resident of Stone Ridge for about 14 years now. Her letter is, to the Stonington Planning and Zoning Commission. I have been following the Smiler Wharf discussion with residents of the area in question from the day and from my own ventures into the area detailed. I feel that your first selectman is trying to create an unlivable, long-run invitation to disaster for your future and his. I live in Stone Ridge, and I am well aware of the parking problem in downtown Mystic, as well as the hazards of climate change, water level changes that are in store. Please heed the DEEP judgments signed by Sally Taylor, which I will submit this as well.
Yeah.
So that's her letter. Next is my letter. And I'm sorry, but you will hear repetition here. I just got here when my neighbor Dave Snedeker spoke, so I hadn't heard anyone before that, but I was here at the last meeting. I live at the corner of Jackson and Washington Street, 12 Jackson Avenue, at the four-way stop. My property abuts Seaport Marine. And I've lived at this property for over 50 years. So for the record, that's 50, 50. And with the exception of our good neighbors, the Hartley family, I don't know if they're here tonight, they were here last week, and Mr. Hartley, with the exception of them at 36 Washington, I am the longest standing consecutive neighbor in that neighborhood. I was raised there with my 4 siblings. I went to Broadway School, Mystic Junior High, Stonington High School. I got married and chose to stay in downtown Mystic. I was very fortunate to be able to stay in my family home. My husband and I have raised 4 children in that home who went to Dean's Mill, Mystic Middle, and Stonington High School. So we've been a very huge part of this town for a long time. I know the town, I love the town, I love Mystic. I've always loved living in Mystic. And I have to give a shout out to these, I'm so humbled and appreciative of the opposition townwide. I can't say enough how grateful I am for people from all over town opposing this monstrosity. So it's not just me NIMBY person, not in my backyard. That's nothing to do with it. We are getting incredible support all over. I've had people come up to me all over town, especially ones that know where I live, telling me, wow, what do you think of that's going on? Isn't that outrageous? People are outraged, they're pissed, they're angry. And I've had people say to me, this has never happened in my life, that they feel sorry for me now for where I live. That's never, ever happened to me. Now I feel sorry for where I live. I've never, ever felt bad about living in downtown Mystic. I loved downtown Mystic. So, as you can imagine, after 50 years, with 50 years of living there, I have seen change. And that's another thing I resent, is people telling us that we don't want change. I've seen, like what Neil Spillane just pointed out, I remember Cottrell Lumber. I remember Mystic Lumber. I remember Mystic before it had Steamboat Wharf condos and those other condos next to S&P. I don't even know what they're called. There's been so many changes. And I've welcomed change. I've embraced change. But this is my first time speaking out at a planning and zoning meeting. And I'm here because this is so incredibly important to my quality of life, to the life of downtown Mystic, and our community at whole, especially our neighborhood. So this isn't about change. This application is not about, well, it is about change, but to me, it's an unabashed, in-your-face assault to downtown Mystic as I know it, and most especially to our small neighborhood. I'd like to ask if any of those that are proposing this, any of the applicants or their team of experts live in downtown Mystic. I don't mean drive through, I don't mean have a business there. I don't mean visit. Do they live there? I don't think they do. Not one of them does. And that's a huge difference. I live there 12 months a year, 7 days a week, 4 seasons, 50 art festivals, uncountable bridges going up. I live there. I know the area. And so because of that longevity, I feel that I can speak quite accurately on what may or may not enhance or detract. And those are words taken right out of our lovely little NDD. I know what will enhance or detract from my neighborhood. And I resent being told by people who have never lived there. And I'd like to quote Harry Bordson on this. People who have never been here, this is a quote and a past article on this, who said, Harry Borden said, it will blend in and not hurt the character of the neighborhood. He doesn't live there. He doesn't live there 7 days a week to see the massive traffic that we see, the floods, the cracked roads. Just the addition of Red 36 has dramatically negatively impacted my neighborhood with innumerable more traffic, noise, cars. I would invite any one of you, I mean this, come over to my house any weekend, a sunny one is better. Sit on my deck and we will count together how many people turn around in my driveway because they can't find Red 36. All day long. It starts Friday evening and it goes straight through to Sunday. I had a cousin, we went away in early May for a weekend, and one of my cousins, I asked her to come over and watch my dog. And her text to me later when we got home was, Claire, it was great. I love sitting on your deck, but I am amazed at how many people turned around in your driveway. I'm like, yeah, Ann, welcome to that side of Mystic. And yet, Smiler's Wharf, this is a lovely little flyer we got in the mail a few days before the last meeting. Two-sided glossy from the Bordson, Harry Bordson and the Holstein family. You know, kind of like a campaign brochure. And so one of the things, and it's interesting to me, they call this fun facts. There's nothing fun about this. This isn't fun. I don't want to be here tonight, like all my neighbors and everyone in this room. It's the second summer night I've given up, not counting countless sleepless nights and all the angst that this might be happening in my neighborhood. So one of these fun facts, and I quote this, we never want to burden the neighborhood with development. It's laughable. We never. If that was true, I don't think any of us would be here tonight, because this proposal wouldn't be happening. So they're telling me that a 45-unit, 73-foot hotel restaurant, sorry, a 73-foot hotel, a restaurant that's double the size of Red 36, a 7-story apartment building, 16 townhouses, 6 multifamily units, all without enough on-site parking, not even close, planted in a small neighborhood with narrow, worn-out, cracked roads, no sidewalks, that floods in a heavy rain. They're saying that that doesn't qualify as a burden or won't impact our parking or quality of life. I'd like to take a quote from Dave Collins' column, he's my new best friend. He's awesome. I've never met the guy, I don't know him, but he has brought this flawed, to be kind, proposal, exposing it to the public to let people know what's really going on, and I would like to meet him and thank him personally. But to use his example, we could ask a first grader is this impacting our neighborhood? I think even a first grader would know that. But what I'd rather ask is, what are they smoking? And I'll say that again. What are they smoking? If this proposal wasn't so arrogant and offensive, it would be laughable. It would be laughable. But I'm not laughing. My neighbors aren't laughing. It has already gotten the condemnation of the DEEP. It flies directly in the face of our own town plan of conservation and development. As you well know, as almost every person up here is just hammering that home to you, and our own NDD. So the question just begs, why and how have we gotten this far? I implore you to do the only right thing tonight and deny this zone change. Keep it M80. Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the council. My name is Chris Chrysos. I am a resident of the 43rd District. I hold my degrees in environmental engineering and environmental science with 3 Connecticut state certificates in hazmat. I also served 6 years on North Stonington Zoning Board of Appeals and served in support of Representative Diana Urban on sensitive environmental issues concerning the protection of the health of children and the environment of the state of Connecticut. I speak in adamant opposition to the proposed zone change known as Smiler Wharf. I agree with those who have spoken in opposition before me. Your job here should be made easier, knowing that your guidelines have been set out for you in the Plan of Conservation and Development, and these determinations have already been addressed by previous speakers and have been made clear. Allow me to mention just one. I cite from your regulations 72132, quote, "Any such change shall be made in such a way as not to disrupt the surrounding residential neighborhood," end quote. It is ludicrous to assume that a change of this magnitude would not be disruptive. Your task has also been made easier by the expert testimony of the Connecticut DEEP. They have warned of the dangers, the potential loss of life, and the liabilities involved with this project. You have also heard testimony from a previous commissioner of the DEP under the Rowland administration, who contends there is no environmental danger and advises you to ignore the findings of DEP. It may come as no surprise to you that most, if not all, of governor appointments of commissioners are political appointments and are not appointments because of expertise. It is the job of the commissioner to listen to the experts who work under whichever commissioner is appointed. The facts remain the same, only the politics change. I highly recommend that you ignore the advice of this well-paid, Rowland-appointed commissioner and instead listen to the advice of the impartial experts of present-day DEEP that are working for you and the citizens of Connecticut. My objections to this zone change are many and in total agreement with the Connecticut DEEP's environmental and life-threatening declarations. They are specific to this location. Other sites may have their own problems, but are not nearly as dangerous to life and the environment. This proposal is an environmental disaster waiting to happen. The hazmat problems will be never-ending, and the actual potential for loss of life in an emergency is definitely present and increases every year. Fact, the sea waters are rising at an ever-increasing rate. Other towns are already preparing for this. Fact, storms are intensifying and increasing in number at an alarming rate. Fact, danger and loss of life has already occurred in other areas as a result of these conditions. Please do not become complacent simply because we have not had a major storm in years. Please do not disregard your PODC. I implore you, do not ignore the experts at DEEP. Do not ignore the danger of loss of life and certain monetary infrastructural obligations that the town of Stonington will inevitably be forced to bear. Financial incentive to the town will not compensate for the risk and the loss. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Paul Sarter. Live at 12 Jackson Avenue in Mystic. I have a really fat file here, but I'm not going to talk that long, because so much has been said. I like my wife Claire, who just spoke. I'm a newbie. I've only been here 34 years. The 34 years we've been married, so I'm relatively new to my neighborhood. But I'm overwhelmed by the support throughout town. When this was first presented, and actually the initial master plan was floated years ago, certainly about 10 years ago, and it was out there, and then it disappeared, and now it's back. And I don't know why it's back, but it's back. There's a lot of reasons. I want to thank everybody for coming out and supporting our little neighborhood, which in essence, as you'll hear, is really supporting yourself. I want to thank Neil Spillane. I was on, not the first park commission, but I think the second year in, 24 years ago. I was the person responsible for designing the children's park that the 53 or 63 foot high building will overshadow. That's going to be their boutique hotel. There's a couple things I want to present. I'm presenting for a couple of different people. There is a PowerPoint presentation. A gentleman in our neighborhood put it together. He didn't get it together so you could show it. We didn't have a projector, but he printed it out. So I have some copies for you, and they put it together. And it basically talks about some impact on the neighborhood during storms and just activity. So I think there's a copy. I believe I got 7 copies there. I don't know if it's enough, but I'm sure Keith can make more copies. I have a big list of things to say, but as I said, many people have said them. I've been coming to PZC meetings for 25 years. This is really the easiest decision I've ever seen that PZC has had to make. There's a lot of hullabaloo and a lot of excitement, but it's really a classic no-brainer, what you guys have. Based on the facts of the proposal, it should have been dead on arrival, and the biggest question is why it hasn't. It's amazing. We had a two hotel proposal for NDD at the top of the hill behind Holiday Inn Express, and they withdrew. I was actually going to go to that meeting and talk in general comments that that's where it should be, and then they withdrew. And they had nowhere near the opposition that this had. I know Mr. Sweeney and his team did an hour-and-a-half presentation, whatever, but when you look at the regulations, from all things that people have talked about, from the POC, the DEEP, and our actual NDD regulations, they haven't really given one valid reason for approval, except NDD gives vast discretion to you, the Planning and Zoning Commission, so give it to us. Other than that, I haven't seen them quote the NDD regulations. Other than that, certainly they're avoiding the POCD. So many reasons why it should be rejected. I'm going to try to fire through. No consultation with neighbors, none to speak of. Dave Snedeker talked about this. I was never approached. Some neighbors had been. Pretty much we got, that's the plan. No, I'm not negotiating. It's a done deal. Those are all separate quotes that we got from Mr. Bordson at various times. Underutilized property, that's been discussed. By using this definition of underutilized property, if you own a single family and zoning allows you to put a 3-family there, I guess that's underutilized too. So it's not a good basis for a zone change. One example, we have one NDD zone, if everybody is not aware, in Pawcatuck. Keith Brines, our town planner, was gracious enough to explain this to me. It's basically a triangle between Mechanic, Prospect, and Mitchell Streets. It was M1 zone, basically a dilapidated parking lot on Mechanic Street, and a great opportunity for this type of design. Nobody's going to build a factory there, and it was actually a nice townhouse and apartment design, nowhere near the scope of this. Not a viable marine business. That's an idiotic concept even to contemplate. It's like trying to argue that the sun isn't hot in this market. And I'm not going to go into detail. I'm going to leave that to, I'm going to read a letter to use part of my time, or part of this time, from Christian McGugan. He's managing partner of Gwenmore Marina and Gwenmore Marine Contracting. I'll submit this as an exhibit. He sent this to me and asked me to read it. So I'll do that, Mr. Chairman. It says, Stonington Planning and Zoning Commission. To make the claim that current economic environment in Stonington is not good for business engaged as marinas/boatyards is false and ridiculous. Most marinas in town, including ours, are near or at 100% occupancy. The local marina community is a small one, and the boatyards are mostly family-owned and operated. The operators are generally friendly competitors and share similar circumstances and obstacles. They also share a common belief that cutthroat competition isn't really necessary, because if you run a good business, have good employees, services, and facilities, there are more than enough potential customers to go around. The number of boaters is ever increasing, while the number of available slips is not. Again, this is Christian McGugan, managing partner of Gwenmore Marina. He goes on. Good facilities, services, amenities, and employees are essential items, and if a marina fails in any of these areas, some sort of drop-off in business would be expected. In my opinion, I fall short in more than one or all of these areas requires a degree of neglect and would certainly cause the boat owners, the lifeblood of any marina, to go elsewhere. If the justification for the proposed zone change is that the local marina business is struggling and certain prime waterfront properties are not viable as marinas, then I strongly disagree with that notion and would urge your commission to contact the Connecticut Marine Trades Association, who could provide statistics and facts to show that overall marinas and boating are as active, robust, and profitable as ever. Sincerely, Christian McGugan, managing partner. I go on, fiscal benefit, I'll fly through this. Fiscally beneficial to the town and the state, it's not. We have, from the state perspective, there was a bond application. We haven't talked about that a lot, but there was a $10 million bond application with a flawed application. Senator Heather Summers and Representative Kate Ratella's name was on the top of it. I spoke to both of them. I believe they're here tonight. If they want to speak, they can talk from that perspective.
Objection, Mr. Chairman. The financing of the project is not at issue tonight, whether we finance it privately or publicly, whether we break our piggy banks open to finance it, it's not a zoning issue.
It was part of their proposal. The financing, their fiscal analysis was part of their proposal. I'll fly right down to the bottom of the bond proposal. The bottom of the bond proposal said...
Mr. Chairman, I resume my objection.
Happy to hear you. The bottom of it says...
Mr. Chairman, I resume my objection.
Mr. Attorney,
The bottom of the proposal says that the applicant will deed the boardwalk to the town. So I'll talk about the EDC now. They will deed the boardwalk to the town. The EDC did not give an analysis, I don't see it in the report, as to how they planned to take care of this. I've been on the Park Commission on and off for 25 years. We have properties that we rent, which supplies money, which we have hundreds of thousands of dollars on account to take care of issues, like painting, like roofing, like our boardwalk, like our bulkhead, like our floating docks that we provide for transients. There's nothing in the EDC proposal. You're talking about a boardwalk, a very expensive one if I look at the picture, and a bulkhead, twice the length of Mystic River Park. Yet there is nothing in there about how are we going to pay for it. The modest economic benefit, $43,000 a year, which the applicant changed to $249,000 a year because they just said there's no school impact, is not enough. I see no benefit, no real fiscal benefit. It's all theory. All right, there you go. Rental market, these are going to be, it was nice to see that the fiscal analysis provided by the applicant initially gave us a $43,000 benefit. They said that because the impact of schools. They removed that, and now we have a $249,000 benefit because they said it's not going to be school-aged families. They said for a couple of reasons. One in particular was, initially, remember, they said, I believe, quote, Mystic needs more new rentals. Now that tells me Mystic needs long-term rentals maybe for a year. Yet now they say, no, these will be primarily vacation, short-term rentals. So which is it? You can't talk out of both sides of your mouth. So when they're trying to tell us that they're going to provide rentals in town, and then the next proposal they say, no, we're not. So what they did is they proved my point. This is not a bunch of rentals or residents. This is a 90-plus unit hotel complex. That's what it is. Maintain boardwalk and bulkhead, I talked about that. Mystic needs a boost, ridiculous. This is another sun is hot argument. It's ridiculous. Have any of these people, now I know they're paid to say what they've got to say because they're told, say whatever it takes. Anybody can come downtown Mystic when it's sunny Monday through Friday now in the season. It's just ridiculous. The last place that the state needs to put money or we need to do anything to court a private investor, the last place we need it is in Stonington, is in Mystic. Parking won't be a problem. I believe I've got a neighbor who will be talking about that. We have facts, not theory. They've provided lots of theory. Do you guys looked at their theory? They say right now, the configuration way is right now, all they need is 72 parking spaces for red 36 and for 120 slips. We have documented proof, observation, that there's anywhere between 160 and over 240 cars on that site on the weekends. Must change to say the same. That's just, how do you respond to that? Must change to say the same? I mean, please. All right, maybe the last, if you don't, I've actually heard someone from our Board of Finance comment to someone that if you don't approve this could be affordable housing. First of all, I don't have any problem with affordable housing. I'm not intimidated by that in Mystic. Second of all, the DEP, you think they're going to look less, or you as a Planning and Zoning Commission should look less favorably on low-income people getting flooded out and being in a safety, a problem safety issue than wealthy people? I don't think so. The DEP's position on residential units stands, and we've talked to them. I hope you have. But the biggest lie out there is really that I've heard mentioned over and over again, and I'll make this my almost last one, is that you guys all know the regulations. The point that just get the master plan passed, and during site review, don't worry, we can cut this back, we can scale it back. We actually had good people who I know, who I think are my friends, actually take that position. I asked this question of Keith Brines, and he said, when I asked him if planning and zoning, if the applicant goes to planning and zoning for site review, can they, and master plan is approved for a 73-foot high building, a 63-foot high building, and so on and so forth, can the planning and zoning arbitrarily say, no, now we want a 50-foot high building, no, now we want less mass? No, they can't. Keith's reply is, the basic answer to your question is no, unless there is valid reason. While there is public hearing, the site plan process is essentially an administrative one that shows compliance with the approved master plan and other requirements. I'm going to file down. He's basically saying this site plan review is for drainage, maybe some design of the buildings, that type of thing. However, this is quote, the master plan establishes the basic framework for the zone, including number of units, building heights, general building sizes. More details won't affect these items that much. If a master plan shows a 70-foot tall building, it is essentially the same concept as a conventional zoning district listing a maximum building height of 70 feet. I advise the commission to report to address these concerns they now have while they have the most discretion. I also plan on stating this in their staff comments. So you have as much right at a site plan review to stop them from a 70-foot building after it's been maintained, after it's been approved on a master plan, as they do if you're an RH10, to tell you you can't put more square footage if your floor area ratio is under what's approved. That is the zone. And last but not least, this isn't just about Mystic, folks. NDD zone does restrict to a minimum of 50,000 square feet, 3.4 acres or so, except in DB5, by the way, instead PV5, which allows 80,000 square foot zones. But this similar development could happen throughout town. There can be up to 5 of these. There's already 1. That means there can be 4 more. And to fit this, imagine a 70-foot high building at Coveside Marina. And that little hotel, that's across from the karate place on Route 1. There's 10 acres there that this could be. Imagine grouping land from Glenmore Marina all the way to Brewers. All that's MC80. 70-foot high buildings there. Imagine your PV5 zone, all you people who live in Pawcatuck. Your PV5 zone, and I was at those meetings, they already require, 40 to 50-foot high buildings, which a lot of you guys didn't like. It passed. They passed this. They can package property in only 80,000 square feet, so 2 acres. And they can put 70-foot high buildings there, too, if it's approved here, theoretically. Now, these can be all, but an investor has to do this. By the way, it could also happen in the borough. You have a PV5 zone next to the marina where dog watch is. And they can be there too, they can package that there. It can happen. I'm done with that. I'm just going to provide you petitions now. We've submitted, as you know, I submitted to, you guys have that one. We have a protest petition. I'll give this to you in a second, Jason. A protest petition that's a legislative opportunity that if we provide signatures of property owners that own a minimum of 20% of the land area within 500 feet of the zone change, what that does is it forces a 2/3 vote for the Planning and Zoning Commission. Rather than a majority vote, 3-2, they now need a 4-1 vote. I know that we just provided that with them today. I know they have to certify that. Just so you know, 40% of the landowners within that 500 feet within Mystic on the Stonington side signed that petition. It's an immense number. I've also We asked some people to sign a petition. This petition reads, "We, the undersigned residents or taxpayers of the town of Stonington, oppose the proposed zone change of the Seaport Marine property." This is similar to the legislative zoning wording. Further, with just 62 total acres, that's quoted from the POCD, currently zoned marine commercial, there's actually closer to 100 acres. We request that the Planning and Zoning Commission amend NDD zoning regulations to conform to the 2015 POCD by removing MC80 as a qualifying zone. This is a stack of names. There may be 4 or 5 that aren't, but they're all Stonington residents. There's over 400 names here of people just like you throughout town, from Mystic, from I would say from shore to shore, from Pawcatuck to Mystic and everywhere in between, that have said no to this and said get MC80 out of the POCD, like should have been the first thing that our Planning and Zoning Commission did in 2015 when it was passed. I strongly recommend Christian McGugan recommends, and 417 people recommend that you reject this zone change. Thank you. Thank you for your patience.
Thank you. We're running out of time. All right, Janice Mink, Allen's, 44, I'm going to call his addresses as faster. 44 Home Street, 14 Jackson Avenue, 16 Alden Street, 632 Noank Road, 10 Jackson Avenue, 17 Joyce Street, 4 Fallon Road, and, wait a minute, I'm off, excuse me. 6 Joyce Street, 68 Wilcox Road, 2 Robin Street, 42 Home Street, and 323 Cove Road. Okay, right ahead.
Everyone's going the wrong way. I'm Anne Marie Foster. I work at 15 Home Street. I have worked there for 10 years, and I've watched the water come and go. I've watched the people who come to see the water come and go. Last Friday, it took me 15 minutes to drive from Greenmanville down Home Street to the northern end of the Smiler Wharf parking lot, which is probably 1,000 yards. 15 minutes because of parking, because of traffic, from backing up from the bridge traffic. People will come to the water, but they can get there many ways. They don't need another spot where they will park on our end of Mystic and go to the water. I am a geriatric care manager. I have to drive clients to different places because they can no longer drive. It took me an hour and a half to drive up to Academy Point, pick up an elderly woman, take her to Citizens Bank for 10 minutes, and then back to Academy Point. The traffic is unbearable. I would prefer to walk, but I can't walk my 90-year-old clients. So I ask that you take that into consideration and remember that there is already public access to the water. They don't need another one. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Janice Mink, and I'm a former resident of what I used to call the Presidential District, Lincoln, Jackson, Roosevelt, Washington. I lived on Washington Street. I now live in Pawcatuck, and I think this is a town-wide issue. I've been living in Pawcatuck for 5 years, and many of my neighbors there know where I come from, and they've talked to me about this, and there is widespread concern also in our neighborhood about this project because people work in Mystic, and they also love Mystic. They grew up in Mystic. They now live in Pawcatuck because it's a more affordable neighborhood. Their old neighborhood is, maybe not so affordable where they grew up in Mystic. What I want to say is I oppose the project for many of the same reasons that people have cited here. We've had very articulate speakers. But I think it's an unusual opportunity also for Stonington. And what I see as a town-wide attention to this nexus of economic development, the problem of traffic, and also ecology. And there's kind of one solution for this, back to the drawing board, I would say. The spirit of generosity that I see in this project, and I'm actually seeing one in the offer of the boardwalk, which, as Paul says, might be a can of worms fiscally, but for my eye and for my physical being, I think extending the boardwalk is a great idea. I love the idea of the farmers market and the plaza. If that could be done in such a way that cars don't take human bodies there. So we actually had a public meeting, which Jason called, and it was about biking in Mystic, in Stonington. That might seem like an unrelated issue. For me, this is not an unrelated issue. I think the bigger picture is, and this is the opportunity that this project offers us, the bigger picture is we have a town-wide problem. River to river, we need to have a more ecological attitude towards moving people. We need to be kinder to the people who live here. And, zoning must be careful. Are you trying to send a message to the residents of neighborhoods, you are unwelcome in your own neighborhood? So if you are in the way of economic development, you better move or tough it out or just lump it. I think that's not good. That said, there are aspects of this plan that I find in a sort of generous spirit, the boardwalk, the plaza. So I would hope that some sense of compromise could occur without changing the zoning. So I oppose the zoning change. But I feel like this whole community spirit that it has raised and the ideas that it has raised are very valuable. It's a very valuable experience. And it supports things that Jason actually has been interested in and has started and has thought about. I've heard him speak many times about how many parking spots are available to as opposed to human beings and so on. So I know he hates cars. I don't want to have us all riled up in hating our public officials. I feel like we need to come together on this, and but that said, I oppose the zoning change. Thank you.
My name is Roseanne Smiley. I live on Cove Road. Thank you, commission members, for coming out and listening to us. Planners of Smiler's Wharf, this large waterfront development, need to listen to the concerns of residents and act on them with honesty, transparency, and patience to help fashion a desirable and acceptable outcome. While mixed-use waterfront development is welcome in Mystic, the proposal scope is overwhelming, while its benefits are underwhelming. Please consider the following as you move forward. Flooding already exists here. How would this project stay literally above water without essential flood control measures that the state said it would not build? On-site parking needs to be increased to accommodate more traffic in an already congested Mystic. It is July 8th, and gridlock prevails throughout the town, even without this development, and without the completion of the Perkins Farm project. Historical buildings and homes within the project should be innovatively integrated into the plan to preserve and enhance the area's historic nature. The proposed building heights should be lowered to better fit within the neighborhood. Finally, a net annual tax revenue increase, I heard it increased more than this, but it was $120,000 after town and school expenses, is a pittance and a pity. Stonington deserves a better outcome. I am against the zone change, but I think that there could be a workable plan if these considerations and many of the others that have already been brought up here are taken into consideration. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jack Steele, 68 Wilcox Road. Thank you, Planning and Zoning. I was on the ZBA for 13 years, and I appreciate all your hard work. I have a business in downtown Mystic. I'm giving a different perspective. 38 years in the same location. I think I have a pretty good idea of the heartbeat of downtown. Traffic has gotten ridiculous the past couple of years. Tourism is great. We depend on it. We also depend on the locals during the holidays and off-season. If we didn't have them, we wouldn't be around. And this community that's being affected will be devastated. And I just want your utmost, this is important to downtown. And I appreciate your hard work, working this out. It needs to be worked out. It's the last puzzle. Thank you.
Thank you.